Hey, first year string players, this is a review of lesson 3. This I'm going to do in 2 parts. So the first part, we're going to talk about counting those eighth note rhythms, and I'm going to do that on the computer because regardless of the instrument you play, your sheet music looks the same, and it'll be a little bit easier for me to be able to point to what I'm talking about in the music as we go through this. Then the second video, I'm going to go over how to play The Hamster Who Dreamt He Could Fly, and for that, depending on your instrument, your music looks different, and so I'm not going to show the music for that. But this week, we started out our lesson for most of us. I know some of us had a shortened lesson this week, but we started out talking about eighth notes. And I know we have some knowledge about eighth notes from music class. We went a little bit more in depth in string lessons than we do in music class about eighth notes. And I wanted to say up front, I know this is challenging, and I don't want anyone to get upset because you're having a hard time with this. This is something we work on for a long time, even into middle school. We practice counting these rhythms. And so I wanted to give you a background of what eighth notes are, what they look like, how to count them, because we played a piece of music this week that had eighth notes in it. But don't be upset if you can't do this perfectly. This is more some background information and something we will continue to work through as we go through this year playing our instrument. But let's start out by looking at what an eighth note actually is. So an eighth note is equal to half of a quarter note. A quarter note is worth 1 beat. That means an eighth note is worth half of a beat. This is what a single eighth note looks like. And you might think that looks a little bit like a quarter note. A quarter note's over here. The difference is an eighth note has this little flag. So if you see a note with this flag, that is 1/8 note. However, you don't often, especially at this level of playing, you don't often see an eighth note by itself. Normally you see it either in a pair, in a group of 2 like this, and it will have a beam connecting the 2, or you'll see it in groups of 4. We see that down on our Smart Rhythms worksheet. So these are eighth notes in groups of 4. In Mrs. Yontef's music class, you might call these TTs, and you might be saying, hang on a second, the groups of 4 look like tiri-tiris or 16th notes. Tiri-tiris have 2 beams, so if you have just 1 beam, these are still TTs or eighth notes. When you have just quarter notes, if I had 4 quarter notes in a measure, I would count them like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? They're each 1 beat. You just give them a number. Same thing if I had 4 rests. Again, let me go down to the Smart Rhythms because they have some more examples I can show you. So if I have a measure of 4 rests, I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. In lessons, we say the rests a little bit quieter to symbolize that we're not going to play when we're there, but you still count them the same way. A quarter rest and a quarter note have the same value. It's just one of them you play and one of them you don't play. Eighth notes are a little bit different. You can see up here they talk about something called subdividing. It means that you're breaking the beat up into 2 parts. So we still say the number, we say 1, but the second part of the beat is and. And so when I have groups of eighth notes, I'm going to say, let me really zoom in here so we can just be looking at the eighth notes. I think that's the most I can go. I'm going to say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right? Each pair or every 2 eighth notes are equal to 1 beat because 1/8 note is half a beat. So we give it the number 1, and then the next one is and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's the biggest thing I want you to walk away knowing today is that if you have all eighth notes, you count them 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Of course, you could sometimes have a measure that has a combination of quarter notes and eighth notes. They give a great example of this up on the page beforehand. Here we have quarter note, 2 eighth notes, quarter note, quarter note. And what they're showing is that you can break down every beat into the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, but when you have a quarter note, the and belongs to the note. It's a full beat, so you don't say the and, you just say the number. 1, 2, and 3, 4, right? 1, 2, and 3, 4. And so you could think about all different combinations of quarter notes and eighth notes that you might have. And how would you count those? The quarter notes just get the numbers, and then the eighth notes get the number and. And so we went through some of these smart rhythms. And one thing that threw some students off that looked a little bit strange, and I totally understand this. Let me just move my video. There we go. I totally understand this. We just spent all of last lesson talking about how to read notes on the staff, where we had our 5 lines and our 4 spaces. Those are gone here. And that's because this isn't a sheet music or a piece of music that you're supposed to play on your instrument. This is to practice counting. They're smart rhythms. We're just practicing counting the numbers and what the rhythm would sound like. And so this is what we call rhythmic notation. It's not indicating a pitch, it's just indicating the rhythm. And so we're going to go through and practice counting some of these rhythms. I'm going to zoom in again. And we're going to go through one measure at a time. So this measure we would count like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The next measure: 1, 2, 3, 4. Next: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Next: 1, 2, 3, 4. Next measure: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Next measure: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if I zoom out, we just said the rhythm for that whole first line. And we should be able to go through and do the whole thing now without any stops. So I'm going to go through, I'm just going to read and point. If you're at home, you can clap anytime you say a number. 1 and 2 and is when you'd clap, or you can pat your knees, or if you want to really take this to the next level, you actually can pluck it on your instrument on a string. So you actually get to pick what string you want to play, because this does not indicate what pitch you're supposed to play. So that would be kind of like the next level of practicing this. But let's go through it together. We are going to read line 1. Ready? Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Awesome. Way to go. All right. Let's jump down. We're going to jump down to line 3. So now we have some different combinations. It's not like a measure of all eighth notes or a measure of all rests. Now we have a little bit of each. So we're looking at the first measure here. We have 1 and 2 and. Now we have 2 rests. Remember, since each rest is worth 1 beat, you only say the number. 3, 4. So it's 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And obviously, if you're playing 3, 4, you don't play anything. They're rests, so you don't play. But we still have to count the rests in our head. Okay, so now this measure. These are quarter rests, so they only get the number. They don't get the and. 1, 2. Now we have the eighth note, so these get the number and the and. 3 and 4 and. Let me do that again. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. The next one. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, so let's back it up. We'll do the whole thing. Again, if you are playing or clapping or tapping this rhythm, when you get to the rest, you don't play or clap or tap, right? Because rest means don't play. When we write this, sometimes on the board, I've written the numbers and the and. When I write the numbers for the rest, I put them in parentheses. That's how I know, that's how I count them in my head, but I don't actually play them. So here we go, line 3. 1 and 2 and. 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, awesome. There's a lot of rhythms here. I'm just going to do one more. I'm going to find one that has quarter notes and eighth notes. We'll do this, number 9. And then again, I don't expect you to do all of these, but if you want to pick a couple of these to practice counting, you can even write the counting underneath like we did in class. That would be a great way to help yourself learn more, but I'm not going to be upset if you just do the ones that I'm doing in this video and then say, that's it, I understand it, or I have a little bit of an understanding of it, but I'm not going to do any more. That's okay. So line 9. Here we go. We have in our first measure eighth notes, which would get the number and then quarter notes would just get the number. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Next measure is the same. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. The next measure is actually similar. It's 1 and 2 and 3. Right? We count the 4, but we say it quietly because it's a rest. We don't play, but it has a similar way of counting it. Next measure is the same as that one. 1 and 2 and 3. This time we've swapped the quarter note and the quarter rest. 1 and 2 and 4. And then that's the same as the other one. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And this little symbol at the end, you may have seen this in music class. It's called a repeat sign. It means go back and do it again. We are not going to do that right now. But we will go through line 9. Back it up here so we can see it. Count through this. Again, if you want to clap or play an open string along with me at home, you can. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 4. All right, so that's just some basics of counting eighth note rhythms. Again, don't get upset if you're having a hard time with this. It's your third lesson ever on your string instrument, and this is something we will keep working on as you keep playing your instrument. But I'm going to jump over to part 2 now, and we will go over how to play The Hamster Who Dreamt He Could Fly.